Welcome back, chess enthusiasts. Today we're diving into the Scandinavian Defense, a tricky opening that many players under 2000 love to use. I'll show you some powerful traps and tactical ideas that can give you a winning edge. Let's get started. The first move played by white is pawn to e4, and black responds with pawn to d5, which is a very common choice, especially among players rated below 2000. Many players favor the Scandinavian Defense because it can be tricky to face. In this discussion, I will share some traps that can be used by either white or black. This way, regardless of which side you are playing, you will be aware of these tactical opportunities. In the classical Scandinavian variation, white responds with knight to c3, attacking the queen, and gaining a tempo for development. In this position, black typically retreats the queen to a5, sometimes to d6, and occasionally to d8, which is the oldest and most classical variation of the Scandinavian defense. Let's start by examining the queen to d8 variation, the most traditional way of playing the Scandinavian defense. White then plays pawn to d4, aiming for central control. At this point, black can adopt a more aggressive approach by developing the knight to c6, applying pressure on the d4 pawn. If white continues with knight to f3, black can maintain an aggressive stance by playing bishop to g4, pinning the knight and simultaneously increasing the pressure on the d4 pawn. If you're unfamiliar with this variation, you might feel uncomfortable due to the pressure black applies to your position. This may lead you to play a defensive move, such as bishop to e3, simply trying to stabilize the position. However, there is a far more aggressive way to respond to black's attacking intentions. Instead of playing passively, white can strike back with pawn to d5. Black replies with knight to e5, taking advantage of the pin on white's knight, preventing it from moving. At first glance, it seems like black is in control, continuing with aggressive play. However, white has a brilliant counterblow. Knight takes e5. At this point, white sacrifices the queen, an unexpected and shocking move. Black has no choice but to capture the queen, but this leads directly to white's devastating attack. After black takes the queen, white continues with bishop to b5 check. The only reasonable way for black to block the check is by playing pawn to ct6. White then captures the pawn, and suddenly, despite having an extra queen, black is completely defenseless against white's upcoming threats. White's main idea now is to deliver a discovered check using the bishop. This can be executed by pushing the pawn to c7, leading to a winning attack. From this position, white has two powerful options. The pawn can advance to c7, attacking black's queen, or white can capture the pawn on b7, threatening the rook. Either way, white gains a strong initiative, and black has no real way to prevent one of these two moves. At the very least, white will recover lost material, but in most cases, white will end up with a significant material advantage. In the game we are analyzing, black attempted a creative defensive idea by playing bishop to e2. At first, this might seem like an unusual move. Who would expect black to place the bishop there? However, it does have a logical purpose. Black is trying to distract white's bishop on b5, forcing it to move. If white captures the bishop with the light-squared bishop, black would benefit significantly, as white's threats would disappear. However, an interesting twist occurs if white captures the bishop with the knight instead. In this case, black surprisingly finds a way to escape. Black plays queen to a 5 check, attacking white's bishop. After white blocks with knight to c3, black manages to castle, successfully neutralizing white's attack and escaping immediate danger. Therefore, the move bishop to e2, which initially seemed insignificant, was actually a tricky and creative defensive idea. However, in the game we are analyzing, white simply captured the bishop with the king, and from that moment, the game was completely lost for black. Black tried to continue the fight by playing pawn to a6, attempting to put pressure on white's bishop on b5. However, white responded with pawn to c7, attacking the queen. After a series of exchanges, white emerged with an extra minor piece and a completely winning position. This was a brilliant tactical sequence by white, demonstrating a powerful opening trap that can be very effective. Now, let's move on to the second trap. White starts with pawn to e4, and black responds with pawn to d5, entering the Scandinavian defense. This time, we will look at one of the most popular replies, black's queen retreating to a5. White continues with knight to f3, developing naturally. Let's say black now plays bishop to g4, a common move among amateur players. Many players enjoy placing their bishop on g4 early to create a pin and put psychological pressure on white. In response, white can play pawn to h3, aiming to drive the bishop away. If black eventually captures on f3 and white recaptures, black can then develop with knight to c6, continuing the game. However, this setup presents some tactical opportunities that white can exploit, which we will explore next. What is black's plan in this position? As you can see, the knight on c6 has the potential to jump to d4, creating a double attack on white's queen and the pawn on c2. Additionally, black is preparing to castle queenside, which could lead to a very active position. If black gets just a few moves, such as castling and playing knight to d4, white could already be in serious trouble. Therefore, white must act quickly, and there's a brilliant way to do so. White can play bishop to b5, attacking the knight on c6, which is now under double attack from both the bishop and the queen. This immediately puts black in a difficult position, as they must find a way to defend the knight. The only move that saves the knight is queen to b6, but even then, white has a stunning tactical shot. Take a moment to see if you can find white's winning move. The brilliant move here is knight to d5. White sacrifices the bishop on ba5, but with a powerful idea in mind. If black captures the bishop, white follows up with knight takes c7, delivering a fork to black's king and queen, winning the game on the spot. Boom, game over. It's also important to note that black has no real way to escape from this trap. If black tries to defend by playing queen to a5, keeping protection over the c7 pawn, white can still continue with pawn to b4, forcing black into capturing the bishop. The reason black cannot capture the b4 pawn with the knight is that the knight is pinned by white's bishop on b5. This leaves black with no good options. Black is forced to move the queen away, and at that moment, white delivers the deadly move, knight to c7, forking the king and queen and winning the game instantly. An alternative approach in the Scandinavian defense. The first moves remain the same, pawn to e4, pawn to d5, entering the Scandinavian defense. However, instead of immediately recapturing the pawn with the queen, black has another popular approach, knight to f6. This is considered the main line because if black captures with the queen, as we saw earlier, white can develop with tempo by attacking the queen. To avoid this, black sometimes prefers to develop the knight first and then recapture the d5 pawn with the knight instead, keeping the queen safe from early attacks. In response, white plays knight to c3, and after black captures the e4 pawn, white continues with bishop to c4, attacking the knight. If black retreats the knight, it simultaneously attacks white's bishop, forcing white to move it back. Black then develops naturally with knight to c6, and white follows up with knight to f3. At this point, black may consider playing pawn to a5, solidifying the center. However, it's worth noting that bishop to g4, a move many players love to play, is a mistake here. Do you see why? Take a moment to think about it. The tactical shot in this position is bishop takes f7. This sacrifices the bishop, but after black captures, white plays knight to g5, delivering a check and a discovered attack on black's bishop. White then recaptures the bishop on g4, gaining a pawn, exposing black's king, and achieving a dominant position, likely a winning one. I hope you found these traps and strategies useful. Try them in your own games and let me know how they work for you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more chess content. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching.